Okay, good morning, everyone. We are now on the YouTube live stream. Thank you, Cornelia, for setting us up. And we are here for a full review hearing for the Star and Scorpion W13-8RA. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. Before we go ahead and explain the procedure and everything else, those wishing to speak who are present and intending to speak, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Shall I go first? I'm Gerald Gourier and I am appearing for the police.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Graham Edwards, Police Sergeant for licensing in the West area.
Thank you.
Yeah, Duncan Craig, I'm here for the licence holder, and just I have my associate Rhea Sukras with me as well. I don't know if you want me to turn the camera around to her. Shall I just do that?
Please do.
Hi everyone, Rhea Sukras, Duncan's associate.
Thank you.
Hello there, my name's Andrew Cochrane. I'm the solicitor for Star Pubs and Bars Limited, and also on this call today is Ollie Bishop, who is the area manager for Star Pubs and Bars Limited.
Thank you. Right. Can I just ask, Mimi, are you intending to speak?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mimi Stupid from the Northern Nuisance team. Yes, I intend to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Okay, welcome to today's hearing. My name is Councillor Amajit Chemu, and I shall be chairing the hearing. My colleagues, Councillor Ball and Councillor Gallant, and I comprise today's subcommittee for this full review hearing. Today's hearing follows an expedited review hearing on 29th of July and a hearing on the 12th of August with respect to representation by the premises licence holder against interim steps taken at the expedited review. Alison Luff is the legal advisor to the subcommittee. Also present is Cornelia Harding, who is clerk to the subcommittee and will be minuting the meeting. Keith Broomfield, Democratic Services Officer, is also present. In accordance with the procedure, I shall invite the police to present the application for a review hearing and call any witnesses in respect to whom permission to appear has been given and answer any questions put to them. I will then invite Mimi Stupu, and after that, I will invite the premises representative, Duncan Craig, to make their representations and answer any questions, and invite the parties to briefly sum up their representative cases. At the end of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the committee clerk, will retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing as soon as possible. Okay, thank you very much. I am now going to invite the applicant to present their case.
Thank you, Chair. The subcommittee would, of course, be familiar with the background from the papers and from previous hearings, but I think I should briefly summarise the background for the benefit of any public or press tuning into the live stream, but it will be a brief summary. There was, on the 23rd of July, a birthday party at the premises. Somewhere between 100 and 200 people, we understand, attended. Towards midnight, two men in their late 50s, as I understand, began to scuffle, which rapidly turned into something more of a fight, in the course of which one of the men stabbed the other twice, once in the leg, once in the chest with a knife, and the chest stab proved fatal. The blade went through to the heart, and the man regrettably died shortly after. That, for rather obvious reasons, triggered a summary review. And at an interim steps hearing on the 29th of July, the license was suspended with the agreement of the licensee. At a further hearing on the 12th of August, the suspension was lifted pending today's full review because the licensee had agreed with a number of conditions that were proposed by the police. And I understand Mr. Craig will tell you himself in his own words, but at today's hearing, those conditions are again agreed, subject to a couple of modifications, which I will come to. The police concerns can again be rapidly summarized under three headings. Firstly, there was an inadequate response to this very serious incident. The public called the London Ambulance Service. The London Ambulance Service called the police. There was a failure to give adequate first aid. And when in a telephone call with the DPS designated premises supervisor, PC Smart said that she was concerned about a knife having been brought onto the premises, the DPS said, "So what?" And that cavalier response adds to the concern the police have as to the inadequacy, compendiously, to this incident. Secondly, there was a substantial number of breaches of licensing conditions. They are set out on pages 18 and 19 of the agenda. I'm not turning to them. They led to the police informing your subcommittee that they had lost confidence in the management of the premises. The sheer number of breaches led the police to describe the management as having a total disregard to the Licensing Act and the licensing objectives. Thirdly and finally, the noise and nuisance team put in a representation. They've expanded that representation on pages 32 and 33 of the agenda. The police concern goes to one little corner of that, which is for them to develop rather than me. But the corner that I'm talking about is that there is a suggestion that when the noise and nuisance team arrived at the premises, the music level was loud and was turned down to their satisfaction, but as soon as they left, it was turned back up again. And there is another concern about the staff of these premises. Well, through Duncan Craig, on behalf of the licensee, a schedule of conditions was emailed to me, and I think to licensing as well in the late afternoon. I don't know whether you have that schedule of conditions. I suspect you have, but I'd be grateful for confirmation if that's so or not so. Do you have that schedule of conditions, an email from Duncan Craig?
Yes.
I'm good, I'm glad. The police, thank you so much. The police conditions have been modified, and I'm going to come to that instantly, in a way that is acceptable to the police, but of course the decision is whether the modifications are acceptable to you. Foremost amongst what is offered by the licensee is the removal of the DPS. Now, I haven't dwelt on the police's concerns. I'm sorry, was somebody want to?
Mr. Mohammed, can you put your phone, can you mute yourself, please, Mr. Mohammed? Thank you. You may carry on.
Thank you so much. I haven't dwelt on the police's concerns. I thought it would be over the top to do so, bearing in mind that the offer has been made to replace the DPS, so it seems unduly harsh to go into the police's concerns. But you've heard the little I have had to say, and you will have read PC Smart's statement. I'm taking the schedule of conditions and just going through them to make a couple of comments. The first 7 conditions relate to the CCTV. They replace they supplement conditions 14, 15, and 16 on the current license. there was a slight concern that one of the cameras, I think it was, wasn't showing the correct time. But other than that, there's no major concern about the CCTV at the premises. PC Smart thought, I hope you agree rightly, that it would be a good idea while you're reviewing the license to place upon the license what are the current modern conditions relating to CCTV that considerably tighten up the 3 conditions currently on the license. Condition 8 reads, waiter or waitress service will be operational at all times that licensable activities are carried on from the premises, and substantial food will be available until 11:30, 23:30. That is there because Mr. Craig was saying that the premises had gone more in the direction of a restaurant than the pub that they used to be. And if that was so, condition 8 seems appropriate. And Mr. Craig's wording or rewording of it is acceptable to the police. Condition 9 speaks for itself. The need to have 1 SIA registered door staff at the premises from 1900 hours on Friday and Saturday until close, and 2 when the venue has been booked and being used for private events. And we're grateful that that condition is agreed. 10, at least 1 member of staff or management who has undertaken an accredited first aid course will be present at all times licensable activities are being carried on from the premises. That arises because of what, again, I summarized it very briefly, was the police's concern about the inadequate response in terms of first aid as well as other matters. And 1 accredited first aid member of staff present on the premises at all times is much to be welcomed. Condition 11 deals with an incident book. I needn't say any more about that. But finally, the modification of conditions under Roman numeral 2 at the bottom of my page 2 of Mr. Craig's email. Point 1 says no entry or re-entry after 23:30 hours to be enforced by management, etc., and signage. It then says this condition does not apply to the re-entry of patrons using the designated smoking area to the front of the premises after 23:30. What arises there is the current license has a designated premises area at the rear of the garden. The significance of that becomes apparent perhaps when I turn to 2, which reads the designated smoking area shall be defined as the lower external area immediately to the rear of the premises as shown on the plan as patio area, smoking area, before 2300 has been added. And the area to the front right-hand side of the premises as you look from over the road after 2300 hours, where the maximum number of smokers at any time will be 10. My observation on that is that I suggest that one cannot, by a license condition, change the licensed area in the manner that's proposed. There would need to be, it would be a simple matter, but there would need to be a minor variation applied for. And then we have Roman numeral 3, the removal of the DPS. And so summarizing all of that, the police's position is we are grateful for the agreement of the license conditions that PC Smart suggested those weeks ago. And subject to what I just said about the designated premises, the designated smoking area, the police agree with the modifications that are made to the schedule of conditions. I just want finally to add a couple of words about the noise and nuisance team representation, which is on page 32 and 33 of the agenda. The police position is that their remit is the prevention of crime and disorder, that licensing objective. The prevention of noise nuisance self-evidently is the remit of the noise and nuisance team. I would not like it to be thought that the police's position is that these conditions answer the prevention of nuisance concerns that the noise and nuisance team have. Whether, and if so, to what extent they do, is no part of my brief, but is something certainly that attention will have to be given to. It so often is the case that when the police say they agree with certain conditions being imposed, it's thought, well, that is that. It isn't. There is much to discuss, perhaps, outside my brief in relation to noise and nuisance, and particularly having regard to the proposal that Mr. Craig's offered for moving the smoking area from the garden to the front of the premises. Very obviously, there are matters that arise there about which thought must be given. I have galloped through what I have to say. I hope not too quickly, but that is all I have to say. But we are here, and Sergeant Edwards is also here to answer questions should you have any.
Thank you. I will now invite the noise nuisance team to speak.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm having issues with my laptop. I had to use my phone to connect. Give me one second.
We can.
Yes.
Thank you. As I've explained in my representation, the difficulty that we've had with regards to the noise complaints is that the resident used to approach the owner of the premises directly, and it's been very difficult for us to gather more evidence, or apart from the incident that I've mentioned in my initial representation. Further to my representation that I submitted 2 days ago, I've spoken with our complainant, and they said the situation hasn't changed after the event when we witnessed back in June. And it's not just the music, it's more the raised voices, which has been very difficult for them, as they don't get any respite from until 11 o'clock. So for example, if there's a family with kids, and as there are a few families in that facing that block, they just don't get any peace and quiet. And as you know, sometimes, well, children go to bed quite early. The main issue is when we witnessed on that incident on the 25th of June, our officers approached the owner, and he agreed to reduce the level of music, which he has done in front of the officers. But as soon as the officers left, that changed back up. And that's the main issue that we're having. And as the resident said to me this morning, is they always want an easy fix. So instead of calling us for us to be able to gather evidence, they would end up calling the owner and email the owner. One of them, for example, said that the owner stopped responding to their emails and stopped dealing with the problem, and that's why they now have to call the noise team. And it seems like a lot of them are calling the owners to resolve the problem instead of calling us, which has been very difficult to evidence and take further action against the pub. With regards to the beer garden, as I said, it's both loud music and raised voices. The issue with the music, it can be resolved as there are existing conditions in place with regards to the sound limiter and other measures. And I am going to propose at a later stage, when I'm allowed to propose conditions, I will propose conditions for the beer garden. But the main issue would be the raised voices from the customers, which can be very difficult to control. I appreciate the new conditions with regards to the smoking area to the front, which might resolve, but again, that means the customers will be allowed to stay in the beer garden until 11 o'clock. And as I said earlier, that will not give any respite to those residents. They will not be able to watch TV or, and as I've mentioned in my representation, when officers witnessed the noise that includes music and raised voices, it was so intrusive with the windows closed in their residence property that they were not able to have a conversation or to watch TV. And that will have a great impact on a lot of the residents facing facing the beer garden. From my conversation with different residents, it seems that some are affected more. It depends on which floor and where the windows are, and what if they're bedroom windows or living room windows. And some that, for example, are on the 5th floor are not as affected as the ones that are on lower floors. Either they're only a few meters away. Yeah, I think that's it. As I said, I will propose conditions, and when I'm not allowed to propose condition at this stage, am I? Sorry, I've just to quickly confirm that. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Councillor, you're on mute.
Mute. I thought it was my.
You're on mute at the moment.
Mr. Craig, I think the screen's frozen for some reason. Mr. Craig, I will now call you to speak.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, so Mimi Stupu asked a question.
Mimi, did you have a question?
Yes, I have asked. I said, with regards to the conditions, I'm not supposed to suggest condition at this stage. It's later on, right?
That's right. That's right. Yes. I'm sure, Alison.
No, I was just going to say, I think it'd be sensible for Mimi to talk through the conditions at this stage, because she's making a representation now. So, okay. And then the parties can then respond accordingly.
Thank you, Alison.
Okay, thank you. So, apologies. So, with regards to the music in the beer garden, as you're aware, the premises have a license to play music, including the beer garden, until 11 o'clock. In our opinion, that's excessive. As I mentioned, we've witnessed the music, and that means from the moment they open the pub until 11 o'clock, those residents are not going to get any respite from the music. I've discussed with Craig, apologies, I can't remember your surname, earlier today, and we agreed on, with regards to the music, to just have background music for the beer garden at any time, just to have background music and not amplified music. With regards to the use of the beer garden, as I've mentioned in my representation, I would suggest 9:30 for the beer garden to be shut, and that includes for food or alcohol for patrons to move inside the pub. Again, it's a condition for those residents to be able to enjoy their quiet, well, not quiet environment, but at least to get a bit of respite from the noise from the pub. So by having a condition for them to just use the beer garden at 9:30, I don't think is unreasonable. For at least those residents can get a break from the noise, and they can enjoy by the time they go to bed. What I've also discussed with Craig is with regards to the floor plan. This is a later stage, but we need to understand. They need us to submit a new floor plan, as there is no understanding with regards to those booths and how many there are and what the capacity is for the beer garden. I also understood that those booths that have been installed recently have also got speakers, and customers are allowed to connect to phones and play their own music within the booths. That again, in our opinion, and in order to prevent noise nuisance to those neighbours residing nearby, that has to be stopped. It's not fair on those residents. For any customers, whoever uses a booth, they're allowed to play their own music. For example, if the music from another booth is audible, they could play it louder in the other booth. They don't want to listen to their music. We weren't aware that that option was given to the customers, again, because there's no new floor plan, and I didn't know that they even have those booths. With regards to the smoking area, again, if the beer garden would be stopped at, well, the use would be stopped at 9:30, that would resolve the issue. I don't have a problem with the use of, I don't have an issue with a smoking area to be at the front of the premises, but I'm not sure how that's going to be managed by the pub. How are they going to count how many smokers are they going to have a designated person to go outside and count how many smokers are in that area, and who enters and re-enters the premises? As we know, there is a condition, no re-entry after, I think it's 23:30. There's no re-entry after that time. How is the pub going to manage that? Or is that going to be an issue for them, saying, well, we've allowed 10, we thought that was a smoker, and we allow them to come back even though it might have been a new customer? They won't be able to remember. I'm not, as you know, there is no legal requirement to have a smoking area, but I'm not happy for the smoking area to be at the back of the rear of the premises after 9:30. I spoke with a few residents earlier today, and I've asked them specifically about the beer garden and the smoking at the back, and they've said that the music sometimes stops at 11:30 or later, but the noise from the patrons in the beer garden, it goes until 2:00 in the morning. So as we know, if the customers go out and smoke, they will cause a problem for the smoking areas to continue to be at the rear of the premises. Again, I can't comment it. I'll leave it up to the committee to decide on the smoking area, if they're happy for the smoking area to be at the front of the premises. My other concern with the smoking area being at the front is what I've spoken with some residents, and I've mentioned that in my representation. They don't feel safe when they enter the premises, and I understand the proposed smoking area will be on the other side of the premises, which is closer to the job centre. In front of there's a set of their gates next to the pub. But as I said earlier, it would be, how are they going to manage the customers coming and going to the smoking area? And that's the main issue. Because, for example, if there would be another incident happening like this time, and then they could potentially say, well, we didn't know it was a new customer. What if that new person entering, pretending to be a smoker, could cause another incident? So I think it would be quite difficult for them to manage the smokers at the front. I understand that not having a smoking area might prevent people from coming. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'd just leave that up to the committee to consider if they need a smoking area or not. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I was on mute. I do apologise. Yes, I was going to say thank you, and it's Mr. Duncan Craig, just so you know.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the surname. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Right, Mr. Craig.
Thank you for that, Chair. I'm looking forward to a hearing at Ealing where everyone gets my name right, but thank you, Chair, at least for recognising that. I'm not sure if Mr. Cochrane...
What happens when you have two Christian names?
You know what? I never had this problem before I came to the bar 10 years ago, and ever since I've been a barrister, it seems to happen all the time. I don't know what there is about that, but anyway, there are more important things in life to worry about, I guess. I don't know if Mr. Cochrane would be next. He's made a representation. Would it be a licence holder that goes last, Chair? I'm easy either way. I don't know. It's a matter for you.
Either way, if you want Mr. Cochrane to go first, then that's fine as well.
Yeah, I can then comment on everything that everybody's said. So thank you.
Mr. Cochrane.
Yes, good afternoon. I've known Duncan for quite a long while, but sometimes I think he's Craig as well. So I understand the confusion that can sometimes occur. I don't have that problem, unfortunately. As I've said earlier, appear on behalf of Star Pubs and Bars, and Star Pubs and Bars' involvement in this is that they are the pub company owner of the premises. and the premises are let on a long-term commercial lease to the premises license holder, and subject to the usual sort of brewery tie arrangements. So in these circumstances, where a summary review arises, we have to consider what to do. And of course, we are concerned about what has given rise to this summary review, and very saddened by the matters that have given rise to it, and have considered carefully what our position is in respect of this particular operator. We've intervened in the proceedings so that if necessary, we can assist the authorities and we can assist the tenant, but generally have been very pleased in these circumstances to see that the tenant has been able to work in a collaborative fashion with the police, and has been able to come to an agreement over the conditions which, subject to your approval, they think are appropriate to be put on the license. So in respect of the concerns that have been raised by the police, there hasn't really been an awful lot more for us to add. It's not always thus. There are circumstances when we have to be much more proactive, and as the evidence in these circumstances, in this sort of case, unfolds, bearing in mind that the procedure is a very quick one, that we have to take a different stance. But that's not been the case here. And my clients are supportive of this particular tenant. They've not had any issues or concerns with them previously. And to be fair, we're not aware of any particular concerns at all that have previously been raised by the responsible authorities. Now, obviously, listening to today, and particularly what Mimi has just had to say, there are clearly some concerns around the noise that the premises is generating, and there are some proposed conditions. Now, this is, as I said, it's a fast-track process. Normally, in my experience, what happens here is that the environmental health team will raise concerns with the premises license holder. Sometimes we'll be asked to assist on behalf of the brewery, and we'll sit down, we'll have a meeting, we'll go through things and try and work out an appropriate way in which we can progress things, which will quite often result in either a change to the operating way of the premises, or perhaps more formally, a minor variation which will change some of the conditions on the license. I'm afraid, and it's possibly a symptom of the fact that these have been very quick proceedings, that we haven't had the opportunity at the moment to engage in the way that we would like to with the tenant, having regard to the concerns that have been raised, which in turn may lead us also to try and engage with environmental health team and, if appropriate, local neighbours, to see if we can find a way in which everything could be put together in a way that is mutually acceptable to everybody, and assists the promotion of the public nuisance licensing objective, but is done in a way that hopefully is sympathetic to the operation of the business. So that offer is there, and we certainly, Mr. Bishop, who is the area manager, is here, and I am available. And if it is felt that we could be of assistance, then we will very happily meet as soon as reasonably practicable with everybody to try and find a way forward. It did seem, in listening to the presentation that's been put forward by Mimi, there were a few sort of, I suppose, uncertainties yet to be sort of bottomed about how best to proceed. And so at this point in time, I'd ask you to take no particular action in respect of the conditions which Mimi proposes, say that I know that Mr. Craig and certainly my clients will emphasise to their tenant that it is absolutely imperative that the public nuisance licensing objective is upheld, that the location of the premises is such that nuisance is a risk to certain of the neighbouring occupiers, and you have our absolute reassurance that we will meet, if that's considered appropriate by the environmental health team, at the very earliest opportunity to try and come up with an agreed way forward. I don't think I can really add much more to today's hearing in that regard, but obviously very happy to take any questions that you may have.
Mr. Cochrane, I'd just like to say thank you for your comments and suggestions. I will now invite Mr. Craig to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll deal with the Metropolitan Police Service first, and I'm grateful, first of all, to my learned friend for setting out those conditions, which I broadly agree with his analysis of. I would just make a couple of supplemental points, namely that in respect of the ambulance, or the first aid, forgive me, my client has been on a course with the St John's ambulance, so I think that would be fair to say that would be accredited, and the other first aid courses are booked on with the St John's ambulance as well. I think the police have been fair with this, that I did point out that anything more restrictive than the waitress service condition would render the business unviable for my client, notwithstanding the fact food sales are a significant part of the business, a big part of the business, over a third. So I'm grateful. I think that's a proportionate step. The incident book, my client says he's already doing anyway, so that just adds a further layer to the good practice that's taking place in the premises already. I just make the point in relation to the modification of the conditions. What I've tried to do here, and I suppose I'm going to start descending a little into the environmental health representation, so I'm going to try and I'll lead into that no, in fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will deal with those as part and parcel of when I deal with the environmental health issues. So I'll park that for now, if I may. I'll just make the point, a couple of points. My client's English he understands English well, and but sometimes when English isn't your first language, people can sometimes use clumsy language. The so what comment, first of all, please remember, let's not forget, this is a bit of a sideshow to what is a human tragedy, where somebody is out on a Saturday night out with their girlfriend and has met with an utterly tragic end that impacts on so many lives. But also, I just ask you to please bear in mind, my client has had somebody murdered in his restaurant. He'd just come back from holiday, and if he said something that perhaps isn't perfect in terms of its delivery, just ask you to show some leeway to him in relation to that. And I would hope that his engagement with the process and his cooperation since is demonstrative of his attitude towards this, more than one comment that was made in imperfect English when he was under a great deal of stress. So I just feel obliged to make that point on his behalf. I'll just make one point about the number of people that were in the premises. I did ask Kerry, I know Kerry's not here to respond to this, but I did ask her to check the numbers, because my client was absolutely adamant it wasn't more than 120. He said 110, 120 max. And we did provide the CCTV, invite that to be checked. So I would just invite you to, not that in reality is the capacity figure, there isn't a legal capacity in there, but certainly there are 185 covers in the premises overall. So there's nothing inherently wrong with it being towards 200, but given that Mr. Gouret has raised that, I just feel compelled to say that my understanding is the CCTV bears out that it is towards the bottom of that range. Let me deal, if I may, with the environmental health representations. I'll firstly deal with, but my client took this license and it was transferred in February of this year. And I have to concede on his behalf that there has been a lack of, and obviously, you know, he's had the training at the premises last Monday in terms of the conditions. I think it's right to say that in some terms of some of these conditions that there hasn't been a sufficient application to them. And I include in that the sound limiter. And I believe that may be a cause of a considerable amount of the concerns that have been raised in relation to this. I have instructed, there's a company called Sound Licensing who I've worked with before, who are based around the M25, and they are going to be visiting the premises and ensuring that that sound limiter condition is fully compliant. So that is in hand. I make the point that the incidental, I have to say this now, sorry, and I do apologise, Mimi. I was wrong about the patrons having the ability to connect their phones to the speakers. That was my understanding when I had conversations with environmental health. That is not the case. So they can't do that, and they have no option to make the music any louder. So if I have misrepresented the position to my client's detriment, I might add, I apologise, but he's furiously texted me that. So that was my misunderstanding. So just to be clear, that there are speakers inside those pods, but the patrons have no control over those whatsoever. And my client is perfectly content that the external area at all times is only background music. So that part of the representation from environmental health is accepted. What I've tried to do, and I agree with what Andrew has said, normally when a review application goes in, then there's a 28-day, there's a blue notice up for 28 days. You've then got a further 20 working days or thereabouts for the hearing to take place. You've got a couple of months to iron things out and potentially reach a position. I first spoke to Mimi on Friday, and one of the reasons for that was I was dealing with the Metropolitan Police Service. This hearing itself has been squeezed within the statutory 28 days in order to accommodate, I think, well, myself and Mr. Gouret, in fact, to accommodate our diaries. And so there's been very little time to purposefully and constructively look at this license in a way that can assist everybody. And I say that for this reason. There are a number of conditions on there, in my view, given what this premises are now, don't work. I think there's some of them that are, frankly, serve no purpose whatsoever. And there are others that maybe potentially need tightening up slightly. And that's, I guess, why I've offered the incidental music. But I don't believe this is the correct forum for me to try and make the license less onerous by the back door. Or for that matter, to bypass the variation or normal review process, because I think it's fair for me to say that we weren't at the point where environmental health had engaged formally with the premises. They've obviously had some complaints, but the normal course of events hasn't been followed that you would normally get in relation to nuisance. And I'm just going to counsel against moving too hastily on this. I think a 9:30 for the external area to be cleared by 9:30, I would submit is disproportionate. It will mean my client loses one of his 2 sittings on a weekend night that he has in the rear external area because he has a sitting at 7 and another sitting at 9. And I have to make this point. Environmental health have said that they are speaking on behalf of the neighbours. Well, I don't believe that's the case in its entirety. And the reason for that is, and I'm a little surprised it wasn't referenced in the representation that they've just made. I spoke to a neighbour yesterday, and she has provided me with 6 names of local neighbours who live in that property, 3 of whom overlook the property, the beer garden, forgive me. Their properties overlook the beer garden, who have given me their names, their phone numbers and their addresses, which I have passed on, save for the phone numbers, I have passed on to Environmental Health this morning, who all say, we don't have any problems with this beer garden. We have no problems, and they've not had the opportunity to make representations either. So to characterise this, the Environmental Health is speaking on behalf of the residents as an amorphous group is simply, in my view, not correct. And the correct approach here, respectfully, is for me, on behalf of the licence holder, and for Andrew on behalf of his client, to engage with, which we have to do. Look, you have a situation here where there is a residential building that is cheek by jowl to a beer garden. The pub has been there a long time. The beer garden has been there a long time. But equally, it's right that people who live in a house or a flat should not have any unreasonable intrusion into their lives. But you are being asked at haste to impose a restriction on this business that may not be proportionate, may not be appropriate, because it hasn't the opportunity to test that, and what is proportionate and appropriate hasn't been explored yet properly. And so I'm just going to invite you. It's no problem with the incidental music outside there. I've asked for this smoking condition as it is. I don't agree with Mr. Gourier's analysis about a condition needing to apply to the licensable area. The developing retail case is clear that matters that are extraneous to the licensable area can have force as conditions on the license, as long as they are operated in connection with licensable activities. There are plenty of pubs and bars and restaurants up and down the country that have conditions around smoking areas at the front and numbers and where that area is. This is not an unusual approach. And so I would respectfully say that those conditions, what they do as part of this process is shift the patrons who want a cigarette, and that's the reality. People want to smoke, unfortunately, I guess, as a society. Some people still want to smoke. My girlfriend is a smoker. I never thought I'd go out with a smoker, but I've ended up going out with a smoker, and she's always has to have a cigarette when we're out. And so I'm conscious that that is a reality. And so what I've endeavoured to do with these conditions is to firstly move the smokers outside the front of the premises, which is Uxbridge Road is a busy road. But secondly, to move them away from the entrance to the flat. In fact, it was Mimi herself who pointed out the area to me. I'm not going to take credit for that. She suggested that area, and it's up to the premises to manage that. That's their job. They've had an expedited review. I think my client is fully aware of the need for him to comply with conditions going forward, and I don't doubt that will happen. So I just made that point. In terms of the 25th of June, I just make the point in relation to that there was a DJ on that night who, in fact, my client remembered it. I only spoke to him about this recently because I've been running around dealing with the police issues. But he had a DJ on that night who exercised some control over the volume. And so the suggestion that the premises was responsible for that directly, I think they have to take responsibility for it. But my client has said that won't happen going forward. And again, that's something that probably needs to be considered as a condition. But public nuisance conditions have to be viewed in the whole. And what I think you should, with respect, be reluctant to do at this stage, given this has not gone through a normal review process. There are a number of residents, in my view, that have not made representations who are in support of the premises. Environmental Health's position is there's a number of people who haven't made representations who have issues with the premises. We don't know the full picture at this stage, and I am hopeful that some accommodation can be made. And I'll caveat it. Caveat's the right word. I will qualify what I'm saying by saying that my client has to recognise, and does recognise, he has to have an ongoing relationship with the people who live next door in a proportionate way. But equally, those people who have moved next door to a pub where there is a beer garden, where a beer garden's been in place, and any step that is taken in relation to that has to be a proportionate one that balances out the premises interests and those of the local neighbours. And I'm just conscious that we don't want to be rushing into anything at this stage, when I am absolutely conscious that whatever you decide to do today, this isn't the end of the story. Sometimes with these reviews, I can close the file and put it on the shelf and it's done. That is absolutely not the case here. There is definitely work to be done. I'm just questioning whether imposing a restriction on that, which again my client says would cripple his business, is appropriate in the circumstances, given the really short time that we've had to deal with this. So I just make that point, and so I think I should just clarify the position, which is inviting you to add those 11 conditions that are agreed with the Metropolitan Police Service. I would invite you to modify those conditions in relation to the smoking area for the reasons that I've outlined, but that's a matter of you. You may decide they're best left alone, but that's something that my client is agreeable to at this stage, to get people away from that area at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock is widely seen as the cut-off point. That's why regulated entertainment starts at 11 o'clock. It's why late night refreshment starts at 11 o'clock. That is seen as a proportionate time of night for when activities perhaps shift up a gear in the nighttime economy, and the impact that those activities can have on residential properties accentuates, I guess. And then I'm going to also invite you to, if you think it's appropriate, because my client is agreeable to these, incidental music only outside. If you want to put a condition on there that patrons have no control over the music that's played or the decibel levels for that's absolutely fine as well. As I say, my client will be working with the sound engineers, and once that's done, that may deal with a significant amount of the issues as well. So yes, I'm going to invite you to take those steps. But we are resistant to the 9:30 closure of external area at 9:30, and we believe that can be managed going forward. Can I just want very quickly? My client has just okay. My client has sent me a message. He's trying to give me some instructions now, but can I just put myself on mute a second, please, Chair? I'll be very quickly.
Okay. Yeah.
Please, just 1 second.
Okay, Mr. Craig, you may.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask a question to Mr. Craig once he's finished, please?
Of course. You will have opportunity to ask questions, councillors.
I'm very sorry, Chair, and thank you. It was of some benefit, actually. But I suppose I'm supporting my own submissions here. My client's English isn't perfect, and the message he sent I didn't understand, and I thought it was important that I speak to him. He tells me that there's not a problem with that area being cleared at 10 o'clock Sunday to Thursday and 11 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday. That's what he said to me. So those are my instructions now. That's about as late in the day as it's possible to get them. Obviously, I'm grateful for your accommodation of that. I wouldn't normally, but obviously he's not sat with me. We're all separate from each other. So he's just told me that that's acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Craig. Just like I gave you permission to put your phone on silent, Councillor Ball has a question for you, and I'm going to give him permission.
I did hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, actually, that's very helpful. I mean, essentially, what I was going to raise was that 10 o'clock is the cut-off point for beer gardens in quite a lot of premises in central Ealing. So I was going to ask you what you thought about 10 o'clock as a possibility. I guess I can still ask the question in terms of what would you, how do you feel about the appropriateness of 10 o'clock 7 days a week, so including the weekend as well, because that would allow a 9 o'clock sitting to have an hour, and it is, I'd say 10 o'clock every evening is a condition on beer gardens and a number of other premises in central Ealing.
I guess the answer to that, based on my instructions that I've just received, is that my client clearly has no issues with that. Sunday to Thursday. I think it's fair to say weekends, people have to expect a little more intrusion into their lives as a general rule. My client, whilst his commercial considerations are not an overwhelming consideration here, in fact, a long way from it, the client has invested a lot of money in that garden. And I don't think 11 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday night, 2 nights a week for an extra hour, which could be the difference between people going there and not. I mean, I'm a very quick eater, Councillor Ball, but I don't think, whenever I'm ever at dinner parties, I'm always the first to finish by a country mile, but not everybody eats as quickly as me. I think an hour is pushing it, given the fact that people would have to order and have the food delivered to their table. They would have to eat it, and it would have to be cleared, and they would have to be away. That's a push. An hour's a push for that, particularly on a weekend night. So, look, I have clear instructions on Sunday to Thursday, and I would just, again, look, it might be that in the discussions we have with environmental health, there may be some accommodation on that. I just don't know, and I'm trying to predict conversations that I've not had in any detail. But certainly, I would say my maths isn't the best, but you're 5/7 of the way there, Councillor, and I would just invite you to consider the fact there's a weekend, and that perhaps people can maybe expect a bit more. But we're talking an hour here, and look, you've got to make an evaluative decision on a proportionate basis, and that would be my response to that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Craig. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Okay, if that's the case, we can now go on to questions. Councillor Gallant, can that wait, or is that relating to the same?
No, it was a question to Duncan, actually, if I may, but I can ask it later.
If you don't mind, please ask it later. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm now going to invite the premises holders to ask questions from the applicant, please.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions to the police, to the noise nuisance team to start with? I have a question for Mimi. Maybe you can explain this to me. What is the normal decibel bell level for music in a garden?
We don't take measurements as such. So, for example, when officers went to the complainant's property, they make a subjective assessment, and it's exactly what I've said in the representation. For example, if someone is trying to have a conversation, or if they want to watch TV, if the level of music is above that level of TV, which the TV or normal conversation, then it means it has the potential to cause a nuisance, or is causing a nuisance. It depends how loud it is. So we do not take any measurements when it comes to making an assessment. When it comes to practices like this, and I don't know if you're aware, there is a condition with regards to the sound limiter. Then the sound limiter should have been set in order to prevent that. So, for example, the premises would have to go into a residence premises and make sure that the music is not audible or nuisance in the residence property, which clearly has not been done to that level. And as Duncan explained, they're going to get a noise consultant to look at that issue.
Thank you.
So I'm not able to say a number. Thank you.
Okay, panel questions to Mr. Edward? Yes, Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jammer. Thank you. This is a question actually about the smoking area at the front, the designated smoking area at the front. This is actually the Uxbridge Road. How can you designate a smoking area on a public pavement? That is the question. Because I mean, it's a public pavement is a place where everybody can smoke, and that does come into play when we think about re-entry after 11:30. And the other question, what exactly is background music? What exactly is incidental music? Can you define that?
I'll answer them in reverse order if I may. But incidental music, well, there's no clear definition, but I think the widely accepted definition is if you or I were having a meal somewhere and we didn't need to raise our voices, then that would be incidental music. That's generally. I mean, look, I forget which schedule it is. I think it's Schedule 2 in the Licensing Act deals with regulated entertainment, what is and isn't, but there's no reference because I guess each case is on its own facts and degree. But typically in a restaurant or in a supermarket or in a lift, that's seen as incidental music. It's not. I think it's fair for me to say it's not always the easiest thing to enforce. Obviously, if you've got a DJ there and everybody, certainly if people are dancing, I've got no. If I'm defending somebody and they're being prosecuted for a 136 offence because of regulated entertainment, and there's a DJ there and people are dancing, I've got nowhere to go. Is perhaps another answer I could do. But it's a case of facts in degree, and I'm sure Mimi can give her own, and maybe Mr. Gouret as well can give his own view on that. But I think that's generally a reasonable way of describing it. In terms of the designated smoking area, it isn't strictly. It is on the pavement, but it would be in a recessed part. So if you imagine the job centre is set further back than the pub, and so it would be in the bit to the right-hand corner that would be set back from the where people would typically walk along. People would have no reason, so there wouldn't be an obstruction there. And look, it's not unusual for. I think there has to be a bit of give and take with these things. Lots of licensed premises have designated smoking areas on the pavement, but it is obviously has to be managed more closely than if it's within the demise of the premises. But certainly, when Mimi pointed me to that, we looked at it together we were on the phone. Yeah, we were on the phone. We looked at it separately on Google Maps. Or Google Street View, and it immediately became apparent. So it was a great spot from her. Immediately became apparent to me that was actually a really suitable place because it was set back from the road, so it wouldn't cause an obstruction there, particularly with the numbers being limited to 10. I don't know if that answers your.
Well, not quite, because obviously it's not pub property, so it's not.
No.
It's not a place where you can actually police it or control it. So when you're saying it's limited to 10, I mean, if it was 15 or 20, there's how much could reasonably be done about that? You can.
I mean, the guidance is clear that once people pass beyond your control, that they're not your responsibility. Well, it is adjacent and adjoining the pub, and the area that's behind it is an exit from. It's wide. It's enough to get a vehicle up, in fact. But that's an exit from the premises exit from the rear garden, and so it would be. I would not be able to argue if for example, a fight broke out there, that it wasn't the premises' responsibility. It absolutely would be the premises' responsibility to manage that space. I mean, look, we don't live in a perfect world, councillor, and I'm just trying to find, on behalf of everybody, a solution that gets those people away from that area, but accommodates smokers. Because the reality is people want to smoke, and what they might do is just go up the road anyway. And I'm just trying to accommodate it in a manner that the premises can manage and is responsible for. I'm just trying to find a solution. But have I gone on far enough now?
No, you've said. I mean, there isn't a perfect solution. So somebody goes to the right, for example, and smokes. Would they be allowed back into the pub? But they would be allowed if they'd gone into this area. They would in theory be allowed back into the pub.
No, if you impose that condition, if they're in there after 11:30 and they go outside, the only place they can smoke and be allowed re-entry is that designated smoking area. And look, I should answer this question this way. I think whatever happens, there's going to be a variation to this license subsequent to this. I think once the discussions are undertaken with environmental health, involving the local neighbours, involving involving Andrew as well, then one way or another, there's going to have to be further changes to this license. And so whatever those changes are, whichever way they go, the smoking area perhaps needs to be dealt with in a more formalized and considered fashion at that point. I'm just trying to find an interim measure that I'm just trying to, deal with the situation as I find it.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, you're on mute.
Goodness me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Are there any other questions to Mr. Craig?
Would it be possible? Apologies. Would it be possible to ask some questions based on the information he provided earlier?
I was going to come to that, Mimi. Yes, there is. You may ask.
Thank you. Apologies. Just bear with me for 1 second. I would like to go back to what Mr. Craig said earlier with regards to the conversation that we had this morning about the residents, that there are some residents that are supportive and they don't have any issues with the pub. Can I disclose the numbers that have been, the flood numbers that have been provided by Mr. Craig?
Can I? Well, I don't know. That's a matter for you, Chair. I just make the point. I haven't disclosed them because they haven't made.
That's why I want to ask you if I can, or if are the residents happy to have that information shared during?
They've said that they have said that they are happy for those numbers to be flat numbers to be shared. I just don't know what the GDPR position is on that from a council point of view, but certainly those numbers, names and addresses have been passed forward to me on the basis that they're happy for those details to be shared in the hearing. Yes.
Okay.
If that's the case, Mr. Craig, can you share them with us, please?
I can.
You don't have to just say the flat numbers. I think that'd be easy.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. Give me a second. I've got them on a WhatsApp message, or not a number of WhatsApp messages. Just so you know, I have shared I've shared the names. I won't do that now. I haven't shared the numbers, but I have numbers for all of them, mobile numbers for all of them. I do. So the numbers are 111, 93, and 130, all of which overlook the beer garden. For want of a better expression, it's not beer garden rear area, whatever you want to call it. Beer garden's more, it's probably more in association with a pub. And then the ones that don't overlook the rear garden are 108, 82, and 83.
So what was 118 or 115? I thought.
Sorry, go on.
Was it 115 or 118? I thought this morning I thought you said 115. No, me.
No. I'll read them out again just to be clear. The ones that overlook are 111, 93. Oh, hang on. No, I've actually got it slightly wrong. There's actually more. The ones that overlook are 111, 93, 108, and 130. I've counted wrong. There's 7, not 6. That's why I've got it wrong. So there's 4 there that overlook, and the 3 that don't overlook are 105, 83, and 82. So there's 7. I also make the point, my client has also said this morning that he will be able to get other local residents who will also support what these residents are saying. But, you know, I can't take that any further than that.
Okay, thank you for that information. Further to the email, sorry, Duncan, further to the email you sent yesterday, I've contacted one of the residents and they provided a floor plan of all the flats that are facing the beer garden. And based on the information I have received from one of the residents, and I've spoken with others this morning, so you've mentioned 111, which overlooks and is correct. 93, so 93, one second, I've lost 93, I can't find it. Overlooks. Number 82 is facing the courtyard. 80
yep.
Facing the courtyard. 130.
Yep.
One second. So 130 is not facing. It's facing.
Facing what? Sorry.
It's facing the courtyard.
Oh, it is, right. Yes. Yep.
So that's in. So we only have 93 and 111 and 108. So 3 residents. And I can confirm that one of them has been in touch with us and said that she has no problems because she's half deaf and she has no issues with the pub. I can. We've got 2 residents on that side. As I said, we have 6 residents that have come forward with regards to the noise, and there are, so on restaurant facing there, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 16, 19, 20, 22 flats are facing the beer garden, and that's on 5th floor. And I've explained earlier during my representation, some of them, for example, those on the 5th floor, they might not be as affected as the one that are lower, and they experience more noise. With regards to the covers, so you've mentioned, Duncan, you've mentioned 185 covers. Does that include the beer garden or just inside the premises?
Yeah, it includes the beer garden.
Includes. Do you know of the beer garden?
Maybe my client could answer that, but I would guess around 50, maybe. But Mohammed, can you just how many covers you got outside?
Hi, we have around 65 cover inside the booth and around 15 or 18 cover sitting around the water fountain.
Okay, so around 80 of 80. Okay.
Okay, I was wrong about that.
So
if I could just respond. I mean, we are in questions, so if I could just respond.
Yes, Mr. Craig.
And that's why. I mean, that's why this isn't, with respect to everybody here, this isn't appropriate forum to be making too many far-reaching decisions about this. You know, I'm because of the fast nature of this, I'm reading a load of WhatsApp messages out with addresses on. That's maybe not the most satisfactory way to deal with it. I'm dealing with it as I'm having to deal with it. And I don't know. I've never met any of these people. All I'm trying to do is pass on what I've been told by a neighbour. This needs to be properly investigated. It needs to be investigated in a considered fashion. And you're being invited to make decisions that I don't believe this is the best approach. I really don't. I think my client has conceded on these points, but I really do feel that this needs to be dealt with in a more considered fashion. And the problem we have here is we can't adjourn this off. That there's a statutory time limit for this hearing. It has to be heard within 28 days, has to be determined within the 28 days. We don't have a choice. And so I'll just make that point again.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Councillor Paul,
one more.
You have a question?
one more
Yeah,
question.
thank you. Yeah. Sorry.
I think Mimi has another question
Mimi wants
for
to
me.
ask another one.
Yes, Mimi, yes, you can ask a question and then we'll be Councillor Ball.
Thank you. With regards to the complaint, are you able to confirm if the owner has been contacted by the residents? According to a few residents, they've used to email him and they used to call it. Well, they still continue to call, but unfortunately the problem is not getting resolved. So are you able to confirm if he keeps a log of these complaints?
I don't think there's necessarily a log. I don't think there's any requirement to
No.
Mohammed, you've spoken to some of these neighbours, presumably. Well, yeah, I know you have because we've discussed it.
Yes, I have just spoken with some of the neighbors, yes. And I was trying to just talk to him, talk to them and see what is the best thing to resolve this problem, but they never wanted to tell me what is. Sometimes we don't even play the music and people are talking, but we cannot say to people stop talking because of the the beer garden is next to this building. We do not play the music more often. It's only been happened to play the loud music once or twice only during that time we were open since last year. But normally we do not play the loud music, and they try to just email us and they said the music, whatever, that sometimes even the music was loud, and we try to bring the music down. That's it.
I understand, and this is exactly why I've said about the beer garden and the raised voices.
And couple of times it wasn't from the beer garden. We never had the beer garden even that time when it was inside. From the music from inside, not from it. We haven't had that beer garden sometimes when they just called and make the complaint. We didn't. Beer garden is only since last August. Is not even a year the beer garden is on. And sometimes when they called it, they said the music is loud from inside, not wasn't from the beer garden that time anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Look, I reiterate the point.
Sorry, Mr. Craig. I was going to ask, Mimi, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Craig, is that for the same, is that relating to the same, or can I ask Mr. Councillor Ball to ask his question?
Of course.
Thank
I was
you.
only going to repeat what I'd said before. Sorry.
Okay,
Please
thank you.
press on.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in terms of these residents who are supportive, I mean, how were they solicited? Are they patrons of the premises? Are they friends of the owner? You know, are they friends of employees? I mean, how did they come to your attention that they're supportive?
Yes, Councillor. Simply this, obviously, the representation of environmental health came in effectively at tail end of last week. There's been a further supplemental statement which came, I think, was yesterday or possibly the day before, which then made reference to the 9:30, and obviously that sprung my client into action, given that's, in his view, on a weekend presents an existential crisis for his business. And he then contacted somebody next door who, forgive me, her name is Holly. I did write a surname down, but I can't find the piece of paper. I put it on, and I've messaged her this morning, but she's not got back to me what her surname is. And then I spoke to Holly yesterday, and Holly said to me, I know there's lots of residents here who don't have any issue with the premises. And I said, well, can you get me any details? And I thought she might give me some names, but she's actually gone to the extent of giving me all their names, addresses, and phone numbers. And it's right to say, based on response of Mimi, that seems to be in accordance with, certainly with one of them, with her information. I am not, for a second, I mean, look, this is a licensing hearing. I've got the luxury of being able to give evidence. I've got the luxury of any evidence being permissible that wouldn't be normally in court proceedings. I'm not saying this is overwhelming in any way, but clearly I'm a legal professional. I have a code of conduct. I'm not going to represent anything to you that isn't what I believe to be true, and I have every reason to believe that what I've got there is credible, but it isn't sufficiently probative. It isn't sufficiently adequate that you base your decision on that either. I'm just saying that there is a debate and a discussion to be had, and based on what I can see, Environmental Health was saying that they were speaking on behalf of the residents as if there was a unified position. Well, my considered view and my professional view on that is that there isn't a unified position, and any determination that you make in respect of this license that will impose itself permanently has to be approached in a more considered fashion than we find ourselves today. Does that adequately? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Craig. I've got a question for Mr. Mohammed, please, Mr. Mohammed.
Yes.
I haven't actually been inside this establishment. I mean, all I know is what I've read on here. I'm a local, but I'd like to know from you, based on the size of the premises, are there any guidelines or regulations? How many people should be in that premises at any one time?
Hi. Since I just take over the establishment like 2 years ago, I haven't changed the layout inside the premises. The layout was exactly at the same which it was since this. I own the restaurant opposite that pub since 2006, and as long as remember, this pub was all the time there, and the layout wasn't changed since I just take it over. The only thing is changed, I just extend the beer garden to the front, and whatever seat was inside, we haven't changed anything, only we extend we done the booths and the garden. We haven't touched anything from inside anyway.
But the question was, Mohammed, what's your, in terms of the numbers, I think the chair wants to know.
Thank you.
If you could just roughly say, look, there's no legal capacity in there, Mohammed. What is the comfortable number?
There is around 180 seats. There is 180 chairs for people to sit down.
There are 180 chairs.
Yes.
In there. Is that what you're saying?
Inside and out.
Inside and outside, yes.
So, I mean, what would be a comfortable number if the place was full? Say it was the last Friday before Christmas, yes, and every seat was taken with diners. How many could you comfortably have in there without it being crowded? 250?
We never had that many people in the pub yet, seriously. We never had that because we've been engaged with the COVID, and everything has been coming up, and these things is just we never had a chance to fill up the pub yet, seriously. 200,
or you just simply don't know what would
we're
be
happy with 100. We're happy with 150 anyway, if we can.
Okay, hold on a moment, please, Mr. Craig. Mr. Mohammed, in one of the reports, I think from the police, when they visited, they said there were 200 plus people in there. So if you were having a private party in there, how many would you have?
We don't take the private party more than 150 people. We don't accept the booking more than 150 people.
Okay, so that party that took place on the night of this devastating incident, how many people were present? How many people were present at?
Between 100 to 120 max.
I mean, Chair, I did in my submissions point that out. Mr. Gourier said it was between one and 200, and I made that my instructions from the off.
And can I tell you,
Mr. Craig, from Mr. Mohammed.
Okay, can I tell you the reason? Because at the moment the incident happened, the beer garden was locked, and because it was after 11 o'clock, and everyone from the garden, they've been coming inside. And even if you check the CCTV, only the front section of the bar, which it was the people standing, at the back of the bar, there is a space. Even we didn't have many people at the back of the bar as well. And there was a DJ in front, they taking some space only in front of the entrance, and by the bar, there was a people standing, and there was no one was in the garden because everyone they've been sending from the garden to come inside anyway that time.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Another thing about the food, Mr. Mohammed, I've seen some pictures and everything that you guys have sent in with regards to the kitchen.
Yes.
So I'm assuming the food that's served at this particular pub stroke restaurant is cooked on the premises?
Yes. Yes.
It is.
So yes,
that
night, only that night, because some of the stuffs, they want the food, and I own the restaurant across the road from Persian Palace. They haven't had a meal because the kitchen left early. That party, they mostly had the lunch, and some of them, they came back for the evening and they had a dinner, and they closed the kitchen around 10 o'clock that night because there was no many people ordering the food, and the food was taken from the stuff from Persian Palace was for the staff meal, not for the customer.
Okay, so what is the last time, the time for taking food orders? What time do you stop taking food orders?
Monday to Thursday, we're taking the food order till 10 o'clock. The kitchen is open up till 10, and Friday and Saturday, 11. But now we extended to 11:30 because of the new condition on the license.
Yeah, I was going to take you to that condition, Chair. There's a condition now that substantial food will be available till 11:30, but previously it was 10.
Sunday to Thursday 10, and Friday, Saturday 11.
Okay, thank you. So if it's not going to be, well, I mean, from what all the submissions and all the emails that I've been reading, if it's more of a restaurant than a pub, are you guys going to be considering changing the timings of the openings as well?
Because I'm a chef myself, when I took over this pub, I wanted to just improve the food with the drinks in the pub, and the timing, it can be for, as they said, 11:30 to be, because on Friday, Saturday, we can just extend it to 11:30, or I'm not sure whatever time they're just asking for.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, do you have any other questions to either parties?
No more questions, Chair.
No questions, Chair. Thank you very much. No, I'm fine.
Right. Thank you. If that's the case, I think I can invite summing up. Alison, is that the case? Can we go for summing up?
Yes, I think so, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Right.
I think I'm first. I'm happy to go.
Yes, yes, you are first. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was just checking my notes. Thank you. Please go.
This, as everybody knows here, is a review of the license as a whole. And the duty the Act places on you is to promote the licensing objectives, all of them, not just the prevention of crime, but that includes the prevention of nuisance. The invitation that has been tendered to you in respect of nuisance to let things stay as they are and deal with that further down the line, because it would be a rush to deal with it now, and is inconsistent with your duty under the Act. It's easy to lose sight of the fact that on the 25th of June, licensing officers arrived at the location and went into one of the residents' premises and found, I'm just going to quote, they witnessed excessively loud music, raised voices emanating from the Star and Scorpion. They established that even with the windows closed, the music and voices were intrusive and amounted to a statutory nuisance. That's what they found way back on the 25th of June, and there's been plenty of time, if the licensee so wished, to address that. It would, and I repeat myself without apology, and is all I'm going to say, be quite wrong, because that is on the table now. It would be quite wrong to say, well, we'll deal with that later by way of a variation. I have trespassed into the noise nuisance team's case, but I thought it necessary to do so. Unless you have any further questions of me, the police objection has been answered by the conditions, and that's really all I would have to say.
Sorry, I keep putting myself on mute. Thank you, Mr. Goria. Mr. Craig, please sum up.
Is it me next, Chair?
Yes, Mr. Craig. I thought I said.
Do you want to hear from if Mimi has anything to say first, and then Mr. Craig can go last?
Yes, that sounds yes, please, Mimi. Thank you. And Mr. Craig can go last. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. As I've explained in my initial representation, my position stands with regards to the use of the beer garden until 9:30 p.m. in order to give some respite to those residents and be able to enjoy their properties. With regards to the smoking area, as I said earlier, I'm in the same position. I wouldn't agree with the smoking area at the back. And with regards to the smoking area at the front, I think it would be difficult for them to manage, and that's why I think the committee will have to look into that and consider if that's appropriate or not, or just not have a smoking area at all. It was mentioned earlier, Andrew mentioned that he was not aware of the issues with the premises, and also I think Duncan, it was mentioned that we didn't follow the right avenue for when it comes to environmental health. I just wish to remind everyone that we did. We contacted the owner and we visited on that same night. We spoke twice, and it continued. And also, as the owner of the premises confirmed, the residents have contacted directly for a while, and it seems like nothing has been done. And I'd also like to point out that it seems that the premises license was only, I think Duncan mentioned earlier, was February 2022. But then the owner mentioned earlier that he's taken over 2 years ago, so he only changed the license 6 months ago. With regards to I think it was Duncan and Andrew mentioned about the beer garden that's been there for a long time, and that the residents knew that they're living next to a park. I'd like to confirm that further to the complaints logged against Star and Scorpion since they've changed hands. Prior to that, the council only received a complaint on 4th of March 2018. That was to do with raised voices in the beer garden, and the previous complaint was on the 24th of December 2015, which is Christmas Eve, and it was with regards to raised voices outside the pub. So the council didn't receive any complaint. There are historic complaints, I can confirm that, but after that recent complaints, we haven't received anything apart from, I said, 2001 complaint in 2018 and one complaint in December 2015. So since 2015, we haven't, apart from what we received recently about Star and Scorpion. So it's clearly there's a clear change of use and everything. I don't know if these booths or whatever and the number of the capacity of the beer garden, the capacity for the beer garden is large, as we can confirm. It was over 80 people in the beer garden, and allowing over 80 people in the beer garden until 11 o'clock every single night, it's going to cause a problem for those residents. I understand with regards to that there are some residents that are not affected, but as I said, they don't forget that you have 5 floors on that. So those people on the 5th floor, they might not be affected as much as the ones that are lower or closer to the premises. Further to the email that I received from Duncan yesterday, when he mentioned that he approached some of the residents and they're happy to. I've spoken with 4 out of 6. We have 6 complainants, and one of them actually said that he moved out recently because he had enough of the noise, and he moved out just before the incident happened, and he was aware of what happened at the pub because he still has friends in the area, but he said he had enough of the noise, so they moved out. The other 2 residents didn't answer. Another one said he's struggling to work even from home, and when he's in meetings, people are asking him whose birthday is it, because they can hear people screaming and shouting or singing happy birthday in the beer garden. Or and this resident in particular, I can confirm which floor they live. They also said that even if the music stops, the problem is the crowd, and people talk very loudly. And again, allowing the beer garden to be in use until 11 o'clock, they're not going to get any respite. I understand they live next to a pub, and they might they bought flat, or they're renting a flat next to a pub, but that doesn't give the right to the pub to cause a nuisance, and not for residents not to be able to enjoy their properties. And there was one resident I mentioned. I've asked why we a resident mentioned earlier this morning, saying that the residents on the 1st and 2nd floor, majority of them are council tenants, and they're too scared to complain or contact the pub. And the reason why they're scared, they mentioned, and I've had this conversation with other residents, they're not scared of the owner, but they're scared of the customers. They said that the Star and Scorpion is a type of pub that they wouldn't want to go there because of the clientele. And another resident mentioned to me earlier today is that some of the residents don't complain because they're customers of the pub, and that's why they don't call the pub, because they might be at the pub themselves, especially the weekend. I think that's it, to be fair. I think I've got yeah, and as I said, just to clarify, when I checked business rates, unfortunately the business rate system is down at the moment, and I can't confirm the exact month, but the owner of the premises took over 2 years ago, otherwise he wouldn't have been liable for business rates. So it's not, even though he only changed the license in February this year, so that he's been operating for longer than what the premises license states. I think that's all. I don't have any other information to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Mr. Craig, over to you to sum up.
I don't know if Mr. Cochrane wants to say anything, Andrew.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple of points, if I might, Chair. Just push back a bit on what Mr. Gourier said, that I don't think that it's being suggested today that this whole matter be kicked down the road, as Mr. Craig has said himself. That isn't possible. Some sort of determination has to be given. What has been advanced to you, I think, are three conditions which I endorse, and they appear at page 2 of your conditions. That's no entry or re-entry after 2300 hours to be enforced by management or door staff where employed, and signage. This condition does not apply to the re-entry of patrons using the designated smoking area to the front of the premises after 23:30. And 2, the designated smoking area shall be defined as the lower external area immediately to the rear of the premises as shown on the plan as patio area, brackets smoking area, before 2300, and the area to the front right-hand side of the premises as you look from over the road after 2300, where the maximum of smokers at any one time will be 10. And I think during the course of this hearing, the third suggested condition has been offered, that the beer garden shall be closed by 10 o'clock on Sunday to Thursday and 11 o'clock on Friday to Saturday. Now it's for Mr. Craig to address you a little bit more on why perhaps those timings are important. But the point that I was trying to make is this has been a speedy process. I suspect that if it was on its own, we would not yet have reached a review stage in terms of public nuisance. There would still be ongoing discussions to try and get to the bottom of what the issues are and to come up with an appropriate course of action, if necessary, enhanced by an application for minor variation of the premises licence. And what I am saying, which I'm very happy to be recorded in any decision you make should you feel it's appropriate, is that my clients, who obviously have, they own a lot of pubs and have significant sort of significant resource to be able to try and help the tenant in this regard, if they want to be helped, and if you think it's appropriate and everybody wants to engage, is we are willing to sort of roll up our sleeves and row in and do what we can as soon as reasonably practical. I can make myself available for a meeting next week, as I'm sure can Mr. Bishop, with environmental health, to try and get to the bottom of this problem and then come up with things that are appropriate, having regard to all of that. Now, that may mean that the 3 conditions which I'm proposing be added to the license today have to be revisited. It may mean that there are other conditions which have to be offered by way of minor variation. So from today's perspective, I think on the public nuisance angle, we're asking you to impose 3 conditions and reinforcing that with an offer to meet to come up with answers to some of the questions that have been raised during this hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's me now, isn't it, Chair?
Yes, it is, Mr. Craig.
Thank you. Well, I'm not quite sure where Mr. Gourier gets the notion that I think things should stay as they are. Those were his exact words. I'm baffled that anyone would think that when I've suggested the conditions that Andrew's mentioned around the smoking. I've also agreed, based on the instructions, that the external area is cleared of patrons by 10 o'clock Sunday to Thursday. I've also offered a condition saying that the customers have no control over the music volume or what music is played. And I've also said that my client's content with the condition that it's incidental music only in the rear garden. I don't know where that is in accordance with things staying as they are. Manifestly, that's not the case. And so my client's not saying that at all, but through me, he's saying that these are matters that I am comfortable we can move on, but restricting the external area as is requested by environmental health. I mean, well, I suppose we're talking about half an hour for 5 days of the week. He believes, based on his business model, he's going to impose a burden on his business that will potentially render it unviable. So I make that point on him. I echo everything Andrew has said. It's difficult to, even if environmental health had applied to review this license the day after the Metropolitan Police Service, which I very much doubt they were even close to that. Even if they had, we'd still be in the representation period now, or because this has come around so quickly. We would then have a further 4 weeks to have discussions with them. We've not been afforded that opportunity. And so Mr. Gourier is absolutely correct that all matters are open, but any determination you have to arrive at has to be evidence-based, has to be proportionate, and has to be appropriate to the promotion of the licensing objectives, balancing out the interests of the local residents against those of my client. And environmental health have been perfectly content to read a load of quotes and telephone conversations that they've had with people who haven't made representations, I might add. But equally, that has to be balanced against what I believe is clear evidence that there are people who don't agree with that. That needs to be considered by environmental health. That needs to be considered by everybody. And so I am not inviting you for things to stay as they are. I'm inviting you to take those steps. And as I've said, that will not be the end of the process. We will engage positively. As I myself, I've worked with Andrew for 10 years, and we are both very much, perhaps not every licensing lawyer falls into this category, but we are both very collaborative. We think it's always best if we can sort these things out with responsible authorities. And we both recognise that when it comes to nuisance, a resolution is not the end of the story. There are always matters that need to be ironed out between the parties on an ongoing basis. And so what I'm trying to do here is agree to what we can agree to, and then to find a way forward that makes this licence in a more considered fashion workable and more workable for everybody's sake, my client, the local residents and responsible authorities. And so for those reasons, I would invite you to follow what myself and Andrew have suggested, which is take some steps now, and then we will both undertake to engage with Mimi going forward to find a workable solution for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Thank you, everyone, for summing up. I really appreciate. Now, this is when we go off and deliberate. It's now 12:20. Team, is half an hour enough? Alison?
I suggest reconvening perhaps at 1 p.m, which will give everyone time to time to deliberate and people to have a comfort break as well.
Okay, that's fine. We will meet back at 1 o'clock. Thank you. And we can now stop the live feed, please.
Sorry, Chair. Do we stay in the room,
No.
don't we? And then we just, or do we get re-invited? We leave.
I think you'll have to leave and you'll get re-invited.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think if you stay, you'll just get put in the waiting room, won't you? So
yeah, the clerk will put everyone in the waiting room.